Have you ever wondered who guides souls into the afterlife? In ancient Egypt, that solemn duty fell to a fascinating and often misunderstood deity, Anubis, the jackal-headed god. For thousands of years, he was one of the most important gods in the Egyptian pantheon, a guardian of the dead and a master of embalming. So what's the real story behind this iconic figure? Let's journey back to the land of the pharaohs and uncover the secrets of Anubis. Anubis is one of the oldest gods of ancient Egypt. His name first appears in inscriptions from the Old Kingdom, around 2686 BC, making him even older than the famous Osiris. His image is instantly recognizable, a man with the head of a sleek black jackal. But why a jackal? Well, jackals were often seen prowling the edges of deserts, near the cemeteries where the ancient Egyptians buried their dead. They were scavengers associated with death. Instead of fearing them, the Egyptians elevated this animal into a divine protector. They believed that by worshipping a jackal god, they could invoke his power to protect the deceased from real jackals and other dangers. The black color of his head wasn't a symbol of darkness, but of rebirth and the fertile black soil of the Nile River Valley, representing the promise of new life after death. One of Anubis's most crucial roles was as the inventor and patron god of embalming and mummification. According to mythology, when the god Osiris was murdered and dismembered by his jealous brother Set, it was Anubis who, along with Isis and Nephthys, reassembled Osiris's body. Anubis then performed the very first embalming, wrapping Osiris in linen bandages, and thus creating the first mummy. This act transformed Osiris, allowing him to become the ruler of the underworld. Because of this, Anubis became the patron god of embalmers, and priests who performed the mummification rituals would often wear a mask of Anubis to channel his divine expertise. They believed Anubis was personally overseeing the process, ensuring the body was perfectly preserved for its journey to the afterlife. But Anubis's job didn't end with mummification. He was also the opener of the ways, the one who guided the souls of the dead through the treacherous paths of the underworld, known as Duat. Imagine a recently departed soul, confused and alone. Anubis would appear, taking them by the hand and leading them to the Hall of Two Truths, where their final judgment would take place. He was a comforting and reassuring presence, a divine psychopomp ensuring no soul was lost on its final journey. This role as a guide made him incredibly popular among everyday Egyptians. They saw him not as a fearsome god of death, but as a benevolent protector who would be there for them at their most vulnerable moment. Perhaps Anubis's most famous role is as the arbiter in the weighing of the heart ceremony. This was the ultimate test for every soul. In the Hall of Two Truths, the deceased's heart was placed on one side of a great scale. On the other side was the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. Anubis was the one who adjusted the scales and oversaw the weighing process with intense focus. If the heart was lighter than the feather, it meant the person had lived a righteous life, and Anubis would lead them to Osiris to enter the paradise of the field of reeds. But if the heart was heavy with sins and weighed more than the feather, it would be devoured by the fearsome beast Ammit, and the soul would cease to exist forever. Anubis's presence ensured that this judgment was fair and impartial. He was the ultimate gatekeeper, holding the final say on one's eternal destiny. So where did Anubis come from? His family tree is a bit complicated, as ancient Egyptian myths often changed over time. In the earliest stories, he was considered a son of the sun god Re. However, in the later and more popular version of the myth, his parentage is much more dramatic. In this story, he is the son of Osiris and his sister, Nephthys. Nephthys, who was married to the chaotic god Set, disguised herself as her sister Isis to seduce Osiris. Anubis was the result of this union. Fearing Set's wrath, Nephthys abandoned the infant Anubis in the marshes. He was later found and raised by his aunt, the goddess Isis, who treated him as her own son. This story cemented Anubis's loyalty to Osiris and Isis, explaining why he was so dedicated to protecting Osiris and guiding the dead to his kingdom. Despite his association with death, Anubis was not a grim or feared figure. In fact, he was widely worshipped and loved. Amulets bearing his image were common, worn by the living for protection and placed on mummies to ensure his guidance in the afterlife. His main cult center was at a place the Greeks called Sinopolis, or City of the Dogs, where sacred dogs and jackals were cared for in his honor. Unlike some other gods whose popularity rose and fell with different dynasties, Anubis remained a constant central figure in Egyptian religion for nearly 3,000 years. His presence was a source of comfort, a promise that even in death, a powerful and just guide would be there to lead the way. As the myths evolved, some of Anubis's roles were gradually absorbed by Osiris, who became the primary god of the dead. By the time of the Middle Kingdom, Osiris was seen as the ruler of the underworld, and Anubis was often depicted as his loyal son and assistant. However, Anubis never lost his importance. He simply transitioned from being the lord of the underworld to being the guide and guardian who worked alongside Osiris. His key duties, embalming, guiding souls, and overseeing the weighing of the heart, remained exclusively his. This shift shows how adaptable ancient Egyptian religion was, allowing deities to evolve while retaining their core essence. Anubis remained the indispensable master of ceremonies for the soul's final journey. Even after Egypt was conquered by the Greeks and later the Romans, the worship of Anubis continued. The Greeks identified him with their own messenger god Hermes, who also guided souls to the underworld. This resulted in a syncretic deity known as Hermanubis, who combined the attributes of both gods. Depictions of Hermanubis show him with the jackal head of Anubis but carrying the caduceus, the staff of Hermes. This fusion shows just how powerful and enduring the image of Anubis was, capable of transcending cultural boundaries and remaining relevant for centuries. His cult spread throughout the Roman Empire, a testament to his universal appeal as a guardian of the transition between life and death. Today, Anubis is one of the most recognized symbols of ancient Egypt, appearing everywhere from movies and video games to modern art. He's often portrayed as a dark, sinister figure, but as we've seen, that couldn't be further from the truth. In ancient times, he was a symbol of hope, justice, and protection. He represented the belief that death was not an end, but a transition, and that a compassionate guide would be there to help navigate it. He was the protector of the tomb, the master of sacred rites, and the impartial judge. The next time you see that iconic jackal head, remember the true story of Anubis, the benevolent guardian who opened the way to eternity. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the ancient world. If you enjoyed learning about Anubis, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more stories from mythology and history.